The laughter around the dinner table cut through me like broken glass. Beverly, my mother-in-law, sat across from me swirling her wine with that same smug smile she always wore when she wanted to hurt me. Her perfectly manicured hand gestured dismissively in my direction. "You're simply not wife material, Harper," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Some women have the grace for marriage. Others just pretend." The other guests laughed. Polite, uncomfortable laughter that made my stomach turn. But the worst part wasn't their laughter. It was my husband's. Drew sat right next to me, and instead of defending me, he chuckled along like his mother had just told a harmless joke. Like my humiliation was entertainment. My hand clenched under the table until my nails bit into my palm. The crystal wineglass in front of me seemed to blur as tears threatened to fall. But I wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of her. The heat rising in my chest wasn't embarrassment anymore. It was something sharper. Something that burned like fuel. Something that whispered in my mind, "You're going to regret that, Beverly." I forced myself to smile. Forced myself to take a breath. Forced myself to stay seated when every part of me wanted to stand up and scream. Because in that moment, I made a decision. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. My hands were shaking as I reached for my napkin. Everyone was still talking and laughing like nothing had happened. Like Beverly hadn't just told a room full of people that I wasn't good enough for her son. I felt small. Insignificant. Like a child being scolded in front of adults. Beverly caught my eye and smiled wider. She knew exactly what she was doing. She'd been doing it for 3 years, ever since Drew brought me home to meet his family. Under the table, my hand clenched into a fist so tight my nails left marks in my palm. I took a slow, deliberate breath. Then I looked directly at Beverly and said softly, "You're right, Beverly. I was never trying to be you." The words came out calm and steady, even though my heart was racing. For half a second, her smirk faltered. Her eyes narrowed slightly. The room went quiet. But then Drew cleared his throat loudly and changed the subject, asking his father about some business deal. Everyone gratefully latched onto the new topic. Beverly's smile returned, victorious. She'd won again. She always won. But as I sat there listening to them talk, a quiet voice in my head whispered something that would change everything. Not for long. That night, I stood in the bathroom of our house, gripping the edges of the sink and staring at my reflection. My makeup was smudged from trying not to cry. My eyes were red. My hands still trembled. "My name is Harper Lowell," I whispered to the mirror. My voice cracked. And tonight, my mother-in-law declared war. The words hung in the air. And saying them out loud made something shift inside me. This wasn't just another dinner where Beverly had been cruel. This wasn't just another night of her subtle insults and condescending comments. This was different. Something had broken tonight. Some final thread of patience or hope or whatever had been keeping me quiet. I wiped away the mascara streaks and looked at myself properly. Really looked. Who was I? I'd spent 3 years trying to be good enough for this family. Trying to fit into Beverly's world. Trying to make Drew proud. Trying to prove I belonged. And where had it gotten me? Here. Standing in a bathroom crying because my husband's mother called me worthless and he laughed. No more. I straightened my shoulders and took a deep breath. If Beverly wanted war, then war is what she'd get. Just not the kind she expected. I first met Beverly 3 years ago when Drew brought me home to meet his family. I was so nervous my hands were sweating. Drew had told me his mother was particular and had high standards. I thought he meant she'd be formal or strict. I didn't realize he meant she'd look at me like I was dirt she'd tracked in on her expensive shoes. She'd greeted me with a handshake that felt more like a job interview than a welcome. Her hand was cold and her grip was weak, like she didn't want to touch me any longer than necessary. "So, you're the art teacher," she'd said. "Not the teacher. Not Harper. The art teacher." And the way she paused before saying teacher told me everything I needed to know. I was beneath her son. Beneath their family name. Beneath their money and status and pedigree. Drew had squeezed my hand and laughed awkwardly. "Mom, Harper's amazing. You're going to love her." But Beverly had just smiled that tight smile and said, "I'm sure we'll get along fine." That was the first lie. I'd spent the rest of that dinner trying to say the right things. Trying to laugh at the right moments. Trying to prove I was worthy of being there. And I'd left that house feeling exhausted and somehow wrong. Like I'd failed a test I didn't know I was taking. The subtle dig started immediately after we got engaged. Every family dinner came with an insult carefully wrapped in politeness. "Sweetheart, those shoes are adorable." "Very practical," she'd say, looking at my simple flats while she wore designer heels. Or, "Maybe let me handle the wine list, dear." It can be confusing for first-timers when we went to restaurants. Always smiling. Always pretending to be helpful. But I could see the satisfaction in her eyes when I'd stumble over which fork to use or mispronounce a French dish. Drew would just brush it off. "That's just my mom being my mom," he'd say in the car afterward. "She's like that with everyone. Don't take it personally." But it felt personal. It felt like she was constantly reminding me that I didn't belong. That I was an outsider. That I'd never be good enough. I tried to win her over. I really did. I bought thoughtful gifts. I complimented her taste. I asked for her advice on wedding planning. But nothing worked. Every gesture was met with that same condescending smile. That same tone that said, "How cute that you're trying." By the time our wedding day arrived, I'd stopped hoping she'd ever accept me. I just hoped she'd tolerate me. On my wedding day, minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, Beverly found me alone in the bridal suite. I was adjusting my veil in the mirror when I heard the door open. "Well, don't you look lovely," she said, stepping inside. For a moment, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe she'd finally say something kind. Maybe she'd welcome me to the family. She walked over and reached up to adjust my veil. Her fingers were cold against my face. "Enjoy this moment, Harper," she said quietly. Her voice was different. More serious. "After today, it's only pressure. Image. Expectation. You'll need to catch up fast to keep up with Drew's world." She stepped back and looked me up and down. Then she smiled. "If you can." My stomach dropped. My hands started shaking. But I forced myself to smile back. "I'll do my best," I managed to say. She patted my shoulder like I was a child. "I'm sure you will, dear." Then she walked out, leaving me standing there in my wedding dress, feeling smaller than ever. I didn't know it then, but she'd just foreshadowed the next 3 years of my life. 3 years of constantly trying to prove I was good enough. 3 years of never measuring up. 3 years of slowly disappearing into someone I didn't recognize. After the honeymoon, we moved into a house that Drew's parents gave us as a wedding gift. I'd been so excited at first. Our own home. Our own space. A place where I could finally be myself. But when I walked through the door the first time, my heart sank. The entire house was already furnished. Decorated. Completed. All in Beverly's taste. Creams and golds and whites. Expensive art on the walls. Fresh flowers in crystal vases. Everything pristine and perfect and absolutely nothing like me. "Isn't it beautiful?" Drew had said, so proud. "Mom spent months getting everything just right for us." I'd smiled and thanked him. But inside, I felt like a guest in someone else's home. Every time I tried to add something of my own, to make the space feel like ours, Beverly would appear. "Oh, honey, that doesn't quite work with the aesthetic," she'd say, moving my throw pillows or my photos. Or she'd show up with a designer to fix my decorating attempts. Drew called her helpful. I called it an invasion. But I stopped trying to change things after a while. Stopped trying to leave my mark. The house remained Beverly's creation. Just like she wanted. I was just living in it. Before I met Drew, I'd been working on building my own small business. I designed custom stationery for events. Invitations, place cards, programs, thank you notes. I loved it. Loved the creativity, the details, the way I could make something beautiful and meaningful for people's special moments. When I told Beverly about it at one of our first family dinners, she'd smiled that condescending smile. "Oh, that's sweet, Harper," she'd cooed like I was a child showing her a crayon drawing. "A cute little hobby." "It's actually a business," I'd said, trying to sound confident. "I have several regular clients and I'm working on expanding." She'd waved her hand dismissively. "Well, you'll want to focus on family soon anyway. Real women don't chase distractions when they have a husband to support." Her words had burrowed deep. And I hated that they hurt. Hated that I started to believe them. After we got married, I worked less and less on my business. Drew never asked me to stop, but Beverly's voice was always in my head. Focus on being a good wife. Support your husband. Don't embarrass the family with your little projects. Eventually, I almost stopped completely. My website gathered dust. My clients moved on. My creativity dried up. And I became exactly what Beverly wanted. Small. Quiet. Forgettable. 6 weeks before our 3rd anniversary, Beverly announced she'd be hosting the party. Not asked. Announced. I was sitting at her kitchen island when she brought it up. "I've already started the planning," she said, not looking up from her tablet. "We'll have it at the estate, of course. The ballroom will be perfect. I've contacted the caterer and the florist." I blinked. Oh. I thought maybe Drew and I would plan something ourselves this year. She looked up at me with that smile. "Don't be silly, dear. You have no experience planning events of this scale. I'll handle everything." "But I used to design events," I said quietly. "I know how to." "That was different," she interrupted. "This is family. This requires a certain level of sophistication." My face burned. Drew walked in at that moment and she immediately turned to him. "I was just telling Harper about the anniversary party I'm planning for you too. Won't it be wonderful?" He smiled and kissed my forehead. "That's great, Mom. Thanks for doing this." I sat there, invisible again. 2 weeks later, she called to give me my assignment. "You can help set the tables the day of," she said. "That should be manageable for you." Then she laughed. I smiled and agreed. But something inside me didn't shrink this time. It hardened. The dinner 2 weeks before the anniversary party was the breaking point. Beverly had invited several of her friends over. Women from her social circle who all dressed expensively and talked about things I couldn't relate to. Charity boards. Country club gossip. Vacation homes. I tried to participate in the conversation. Tried to be charming and gracious. But I could feel them judging me. Assessing my clothes, my manners, my worth. Halfway through the meal, one of Beverly's friends mentioned marriage advice. "The key is knowing your place," she said. Beverly jumped in immediately, looking directly at me. "Exactly. Not everyone's built for marriage. Some women have that natural grace and presence. She paused dramatically. Others just pretend. The table went silent for a heartbeat. Then they all laughed. Polite, knowing laughter that said they understood exactly who she was talking about. Drew laughed too. Not loudly, but enough. My chest felt like it was on fire. My throat closed up. I couldn't breathe. I excused myself quietly and walked to the bathroom. My hands were shaking as I gripped the edge of the sink. I could hear them still talking and laughing in the dining room. That was the exact moment I decided. No more playing nice. No more trying to win her approval. No more shrinking myself to fit into her world. If Beverly wanted to play games, fine. But this game was about to change. In the car on the way home, I waited for Drew to say something. To acknowledge what had happened. To defend me or apologize or show any sign that he'd noticed his mother humiliating me. Instead, he turned on the radio. After 10 minutes of silence, I finally spoke. Your mother basically called me a fake in front of all her friends tonight. He sighed. Harper, you really need to stop taking everything so personally. She was just joking around. Joking? My voice cracked. She said I was pretending to be wife material. She didn't mean it like that, he said. You're being too sensitive. I stared at him in the dark car and realized something that made my stomach drop. He was never going to defend me. Not against her. Not ever. He'd chosen his side a long time ago, and it wasn't mine. I turned away and looked out the window at the passing streetlights. My reflection stared back at me, and in that moment, I made a promise to myself. My revenge wouldn't be loud. Wouldn't be cruel. Wouldn't be obvious. It would be quiet and methodical and undeniable. And it would happen at the party she was so proud of planning. In 2 weeks, Beverly's perfect anniversary celebration was going to become my stage. And she had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke up before Drew and went straight to my laptop. My old business website was still up, though I hadn't updated it in over a year. I stared at it for a long time, remembering who I used to be. The woman who'd been excited about creating beautiful things. Who'd had ambition and dreams. I started making calls. First old clients, apologizing for disappearing and asking if they'd be interested in working with me again. Then to vendors I used to partner with. Then to contacts I'd made at design expos years ago but never followed up with. One call was to an investor I'd met briefly at a trade show. He'd given me his card and told me to reach out if I ever wanted to scale my business. I'd put the card in a drawer and forgotten about it. Until now. Mr. Patterson? I said when he answered. This is Harper Lowell. We met at the Design Collective Expo 2 years ago. You gave me your card and said to call if I was ready to take my stationery business to the next level. There was a pause. Harper. Yes, I remember. The wedding invitation designs. Beautiful work. Are you ready to talk? Yes, I said, my voice steady for the first time in months. I'm ready. For the next 2 weeks, I barely slept. While Drew was at work during the day, I worked on my business. And at night, while he slept beside me, I stayed up in the living room working until dawn. Mock-ups scattered across the coffee table. Sketches pinned to a board I'd set up in the corner. Empty coffee cups lined the counter. My eyes burned from staring at my laptop screen. But I didn't stop. Every insult Beverly had ever thrown at me played on repeat in my mind. Every condescending smile. Every dismissive wave of her hand. Every time she'd made me feel worthless. Not wife material, she'd said. I whispered back to my empty living room, watch me. The investor, Mr. Patterson, had loved my portfolio. He connected me with a luxury brand that was looking for a designer to create their entire stationery line for a nationwide gala series. It was the biggest opportunity I'd ever had. I worked on that proposal like my life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about proving that I was more than Beverly's idea of me. More than the small, quiet woman I'd become. I was taking back the part of myself I'd lost. One design at a time. 12 days before the anniversary party, I got the call. I was in my car in the grocery store parking lot when my phone rang. Mr. Patterson's name flashed on the screen. "Harper," he said when I answered. I could hear the smile in his voice. They loved it. They want to move forward with the partnership. My heart stopped. They do? Every single design. They want your name printed on every invitation for their nationwide gala series. This is big, Harper. Really big. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Tears started running down my face. "Are you there?" he asked. "Yes," I managed. "Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you so much." After I hung up, I sat in my car and cried. But these weren't sad tears. They were tears of relief. Of validation. Of knowing that I hadn't been crazy for believing I could do this. Overnight, I'd gone from Drew's wife to Harper Lowell, founder of Studio Haven. My designs would be seen by thousands of people. My name would be on products in stores. The business Beverly had called a cute hobby was about to become impossible to ignore. And the best part? Nobody knew. Not Drew. Not Beverly. I'd kept it completely secret. Because the reveal needed to be perfect. And Beverly had given me the perfect stage. Her anniversary party. In 2 weeks. I told no one about the partnership. Not even Drew. When he asked what I'd been working on late at night, I just said I was redesigning our guest room. He didn't ask for details. That was fine. Let them all think I was still small. Still quiet. Still the woman who set tables at parties because she couldn't be trusted with anything important. The power was in the reveal. And Beverly loved a big stage, loved being the center of attention, loved showing off. This party was going to be her masterpiece. She'd been planning every detail for weeks, making sure everything was perfect, inviting everyone important in her social circle. She wanted to show them all how she'd trained her son's inadequate wife. How she'd molded me into something acceptable. What she didn't know was that I'd been building something behind her back. Something she'd mocked and dismissed and tried to destroy. And now it was about to make national headlines. I spent those 2 weeks preparing. Making sure every detail of my business launch was perfect. Making sure the timing was right. I was going to let Beverly build her perfect party. And then I was going to show everyone who truly held the power. 1 week before the party, Beverly insisted on taking me shopping for a dress. "You'll need something suitable for the occasion," she'd said on the phone. "Something elegant but not attention-seeking. We don't want you overshadowing Drew." I agreed to meet her at an expensive boutique downtown. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in the VIP area with a glass of champagne. The sales associate brought out dress after dress. Beverly rejected most of them immediately. Too bright. Too young for her. Not appropriate for a family event. Finally, they brought out a champagne silk gown. It was beautiful. Elegant but bold. The kind of dress that made a statement. "That one," I said immediately. Beverly frowned. "It's too much, Harper. You'll draw too much attention." "It's perfect," I said firmly. For once, I didn't back down. The sales associate looked between us nervously. "I'll try it on," I said, taking the dress. When I came out of the dressing room, even Beverly couldn't hide her reaction. I looked good. Really good. The dress fit perfectly, catching the light in a way that made me feel powerful. "It's too bold," Beverly said, but her voice was uncertain. "I'm buying it," I said. And I did. In the car afterward, I smiled to myself. 1 week left. 1 week until everything changed. For days before the party, I overheard Beverly talking on the phone. I'd stopped by the house to drop off some items she'd asked for. I was in the hallway when I heard her voice coming from the sitting room. "I give it another year, maybe 2, she was saying. "Before Drew comes to his senses." My hand froze on the doorknob. "She's just not built for our world," Beverly continued. "She tries, I'll give her that. But she'll never really fit in. Eventually, he'll realize what a mistake this marriage was." I stood there listening, my heart pounding. I should have been devastated. 6 months ago, I would have been. But now? Now I just smiled. "Neither are you," I whispered so quietly only I could hear. "Not the new world I'm building." I left the items by the door and walked out without announcing myself. 3 more days. 3 more days and Beverly's smug superiority would crumble. 3 more days and everyone would see what I'd built. 3 more days and the world she thought she controlled would shift beneath her feet. I drove home and opened my laptop. The press release was ready. My company's logo was designed. The collaboration with the luxury brand was finalized. Everything was in place. I just needed to time it perfectly. The night before the party, I sat in my home office at midnight. Drew was asleep upstairs. The house was quiet except for the sound of my fingers on the keyboard. I'd written and rewritten the press release a dozen times. Now it was perfect. It announced the partnership between Studio Haven and the luxury brand. It featured photos of my designs. It included quotes from Mr. Patterson and the brand executives praising my work. It explained how my stationery would be featured at major events across the country. My name. My company. My success. Everything Beverly said would never happen. I scheduled the release to go live at midnight. Right as the anniversary party would be starting. The timing was intentional. Calculated. Perfect. At 11:59 p.m., my finger hovered over the publish button. I took a deep breath. This was it. No going back. The press release would hit major design blogs, social media, industry publications. By tomorrow night, everyone at that party would have seen it. Everyone would know. Beverly's carefully controlled narrative about me was about to explode. I clicked publish. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. The next evening, I stood in front of the mirror in the champagne silk dress. My hair was styled perfectly. My makeup was flawless. I looked powerful. Confident. Like someone who knew exactly who she was. Drew came up behind me. "You look beautiful," he said, sounding surprised. Like he'd forgotten I could look like this. "Thank you," I said calmly. My phone had been buzzing all day. Messages. Comments. Shares. The press release had gone viral. My designs were trending on social media. Industry professionals were reaching out. Magazine editors wanted interviews. Everything was happening exactly as I'd planned. And Beverly had no idea. We drove to her estate in silence. I could see the lights from the ballroom glowing in the distance. Cars lined the driveway. This was the biggest party she'd ever thrown. When we walked through the doors, conversations paused. People turned to look. Some I recognized started pulling out their phones, whispering to each other. They'd seen the news. They knew. I walked through that marble ballroom with my head high, Drew beside me, and watched as realization spread through the crowd. Beverly was across the room talking to guests. She turned when she saw us. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw my dress. Saw the way people were looking at me. Saw something had shifted. She forced a smile. "Well, don't you look different tonight, Harper?" I smiled back. "Confidence suits me, don't you think?" Halfway through dinner, Beverly stood up and clinked her crystal glass. The room went quiet as everyone turned to face her. This was her moment. The moment she'd been planning. The queen of her kingdom making pronouncements. "I'd like to make a toast," she announced, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "To Drew and his beautiful wife Harper." She smiled at us. At me. Marriage is about patience. About understanding your role. About knowing your place. Several guests laughed politely. Some looked uncomfortable. I saw a few people glancing at their phones. "Harper has certainly been patient these past 3 years," Beverly continued, warming to her subject. "Learning. Adapting. Trying very hard to fit in." The condescension in her voice was unmistakable. Even Drew shifted uncomfortably beside me. But I just raised my glass along with everyone else. My face was calm. Serene. "I couldn't agree more, Beverly," I said clearly. Everyone looked at me. Patience does change everything. She blinked, uncertain what I meant. Before she could respond, I added, "Sometimes you just need to wait for the right moment to show people who you really are." Her smile wavered. Something in my tone had unsettled her. But she recovered quickly. "Well, yes, of course," she said. Then she raised her glass higher. "To Drew and Harper." "To Drew and Harper," the room echoed. I took a sip of champagne and waited. It wouldn't be long now. 10 minutes later, the event planner Beverly had hired rushed over to her table. The woman's face was pale and confused. She leaned down and whispered something urgently in Beverly's ear. I watched from across the room as Beverly's expression changed. First confusion. Then shock. Then something close to panic. Her eyes snapped to me. I smiled and took another sip of champagne. Beverly stood up quickly and walked over to our table. Drew was talking to someone and didn't notice her approach. "Harper," she said, her voice tight. "May I speak with you privately?" "Of course," I said pleasantly. "But we can talk here." "Is something wrong?" Her jaw clenched. "The event planner just informed me that your company's logo is on all the event signage." I tilted my head innocently. "Oh, didn't Drew tell you?" Studio Haven sponsored the entire design for the party. Drew's head snapped toward me. "What?" Beverly's face went from pink to white. "You what?" Several guests at nearby tables had turned to listen. Phones were already out, recording. "Every centerpiece," I said clearly. "Every invitation. Every program. Every single piece of stationery and signage you've been bragging about all night?" I paused for effect. My company designed it all. The silence was deafening. Beverly's wineglass trembled in her hand. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Why would you? How did you? You hired an event planner," I said calmly. "She hired my company. I guess she saw the press release that went viral today about my partnership with Sterling Luxury Brands. We're their exclusive design partner now." Beverly's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Her face had gone completely white. Around us, phones were recording. People were whispering. The story was already spreading. "You, what?" Beverly stammered. "When did you?" "Over the past few weeks," I said, standing up. While you were planning this party and talking about how I'm not wife material. Her eyes darted around the room. She could see people watching, recording, judging. For the first time in the 3 years I'd known her, Beverly looked powerless. Every single detail of this party that you've been taking credit for? I continued, my voice steady and clear. The elegant invitations? The coordinated color scheme? The custom place cards? All my work. I smiled. You were right about one thing, Beverly. I did need to know my place. I paused. Turns out my place is as CEO of a company that just landed a nationwide partnership. A guest I recognized from magazines approached us. Mrs. Lowell, she said, using my name instead of calling me Drew's wife. Would you mind if I got a photo? I'm a huge fan of your work. Beverly stood frozen as cameras flashed around me. More people came over. Designers. Bloggers. Event planners. All wanting to talk to me. Compliment my designs. Take photos. I smiled for every camera. Answered every question gracefully. And watched Beverly's carefully constructed world crumble around her. An hour later, Beverly tried to corner me near the bar. Most of the guests were still talking about the revelation. About me. About my designs. About how the entire party they were enjoying was my creation. You could have told me, Beverly hissed, her champagne glass empty, her hands shaking slightly. Could have warned me. I looked at her calmly. Like you warned me before calling me worthless at dinner 2 weeks ago? Her face flushed. I never said worthless. You said I wasn't wife material, I corrected. In front of your friends. While my husband laughed. She opened her mouth but no words came out. You mocked my business for 3 years, I continued quietly. Called it a hobby. A distraction. Something real women didn't waste time on. My voice stayed even, controlled. You made me feel small every single day. Made me question my worth. Made me believe I wasn't good enough. Harper, you could have respected me, I said, cutting her off. You could have supported me. You could have been kind. I set down my glass. But you weren't. So I stopped waiting for your approval. I looked her in the eyes. I don't need it anymore. Then I turned and walked away. My heels clicked on the marble floor. Behind me, Beverly's silence echoed like the loudest applause I'd ever heard. The party continued for another 2 hours. But everything had changed. People weren't gathering around Beverly anymore. They were gathering around me. Asking about my designs. My company. My plans. Drew stood awkwardly beside me, realizing that his mother's empire of control had just collapsed. That I was no longer the quiet, forgettable wife everyone had dismissed. Later, as we drove home, he was silent. Finally, he spoke. I had no idea you were working on all this. I know, I said. You never asked. My mother is going to be furious. She already is. He was quiet for a moment. She'll never admit she was wrong about you. I smiled at the darkness outside my window. She doesn't need to. My phone buzzed with another notification. Another client wanting to work with Studio Haven. Another article about the party and the viral revelation. Another opportunity opening up. Drew looked over. What's that? Just work, I said. My company's getting a lot of attention. He nodded slowly. We drove the rest of the way in silence. When we got home, he went straight to bed. But I went to my studio, the room I'd reclaimed as my own space. Surrounded by sketches and designs and evidence of what I'd built. On my desk was the first invitation I'd ever designed. Years ago, before Beverly. Before I'd shrunk myself to fit into someone else's world. I picked it up and smiled. The next morning, I woke up early and went straight to my studio. The sunrise was just beginning, golden light streaming through the windows. My phone was still buzzing with notifications. Messages from clients. Interview requests from magazines. Partnership opportunities from brands I'd only dreamed of working with before. My company had exploded overnight. Everything I'd worked for in secret was now public. Real. Undeniable. Drew appeared in the doorway with coffee. He looked tired. My mother called, he said. 3 times already this morning. I'm sure she did. He sat down, silent for a moment. She says you humiliated her on purpose. Planned the whole thing to embarrass her. I planned it to show her who I really am, I corrected. The embarrassment was just her realizing she was wrong. He didn't argue. Instead, he said quietly, she'll never admit that, you know. She'll find a way to make herself the victim. I smiled and looked out the window. I don't need her to admit anything. My laptop pinged with another order. A major shipment for a client. I opened it and began organizing the details. Drew watched me work for a minute. You're different now, he said. No, I corrected him again. I'm exactly who I always was. I just stopped hiding it to make your mother comfortable. I turned back to my screen, to my work, to the business I'd built. They said I wasn't wife material, I whispered, more to myself than to him. Turns out I was CEO material all along. And finally, for the first time in 3 years, I believed it completely.